Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/malicious compliance. In today's episode, if you don't do the senior project, then you won't walk during graduation. Well, okay then. But the transfer number doesn't go to the right place. It goes, okie dokie. Shutting up. You're the boss. My school spends $1,200 going behind my back, ends up and letting me get out of a week of classes. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. If you don't do the senior project, then you won't walk during graduation. Well, okay then. Back in 2013, I was a senior at a high school I had just transferred to. I had moved earlier in the year because my parent got divorced, and I made the deliberate choice to leave my old high school and move in with my dad, attending a new high school. I won't go into much detail about the why, but it was my decision to leave my mom, my old school, and my hometown in the Bay Area, and move into a small apartment with my dad. This comes up later. Normally, switching schools isn't a huge deal, but it was sort of an abrupt move. I wasn't able to take any of the AP classes I normally would have taken because they all had mandatory summer projects that I wouldn't have been able to do in a week. Additionally, a week into the school year, we were told about this stupid senior project they wanted us to do. In a nutshell, there was some acronym like IMPACT or something, and each letter represented a value of the school. They wanted us to write about how IMPACT had influenced us in our time at the school. We were then told that, should we not do the senior project, we wouldn't be able to walk for graduation. I heard this and thought it was stupid for a number of reasons, not the least of which being that I had only just gotten there, so their dumb acronym didn't mean anything to me. I brought this concern up to the lady telling us about the project, and her response was that I just figure something out, or don't walk. Well, okay then. I brought it up with my dad, asked if he gave a hot sh*t whether or not I walked for a high school graduation. He did not. So I just figured that I wouldn't do the project. End of story, right? Wrong. You see, a few months into this senior project, they did a checkup on every senior. We just lined up in our homeroom to talk to some lady from the principal's office and told her how close we were to being done. When I walked up, I told her that I wasn't doing it. She was confused. You're not going to do it. You have to. It's non-negotiable. No, it's not. I don't have to do it. But you won't walk if you don't do it. Yeah. Then we just sorta stared at each other, and she wrote my name down and shooed me away. I correctly assumed that this would not be the last interaction I had regarding this non-issue. Several weeks later, my suspicions were confirmed when I was pulled out of class and brought into the main office. They ushered me into the vice principal's personal office, where she made a bit of a show of pulling out some papers. She told me that the meeting was regarding a misunderstanding I may have had regarding the senior project. She was apparently told that I didn't know what to do for the assignment, and I chose to boycott the whole thing as a result. I quickly corrected her and explained that I very clearly understood what they wanted me to do, but that I thought it was stupid and wasn't going to do it. I also explained that I understood the penalty and was fine with it. She, like the first lady, seemed confused by this course of action and just let me leave, since there wasn't really much of a conversation to be had. A few more weeks later, I get pulled out of yet another class for this same thing. Again, I'm brought up to the vice principal for a one-on-one. When I get there, she looks like the cat that ate the canary. She begins, "So, I know you were in here a while ago, and you said you didn't want to do your senior project." "No," I interrupted, "I said I wasn't doing the project." "Well," she continued, "we had a chat with your mother over the phone earlier this week. She told us that she really wants you to walk on your graduation." I was quiet for a moment. I live with my dad." "Right, but your mom said she'd like to attend the ceremony and see you walk." "I don't think you get it," I stated. "I live with my dad for a reason." If ever there were an expression that perfectly exemplified the dial-up tone, that's the face she made. After she collected herself, I was released and headed back to class. By this point, I was mostly just not doing the project because it was dumb. But them calling a family member to strong-arm me was crossing a line. On top of that, they tried to strong-arm me using a parent with whom I was no contact. I decided right then that, no matter what, I wasn't caving into their bullshit. FCK the project, FCK the school, F*CK the weird tactics they were trying to use. Though in my anger was also confusion. Why the hell did these people care so damn much about one guy not doing an optional assignment? Also, I made myself very clear, so was that the end of it? Spoiler, it wasn't. A few more weeks later, I got pulled into the actual principal's office. The principal, for reference, was one of those guys that tried to make a show of being overly friendly and goofy, but to the point where it came off as superficial. When I got to his office, he was his usual extroverted self, greeted me, and sat me down.
So, I've heard about this whole senior project problem you've had going on. And I get it. Trust me, I really do. You're new here, so our motto hasn't had as much of an impression. So, after talking about it with the folks grading the projects, we think it'd be just fine if you had a modified project. Just do a project on one letter of impact, and you're golden. He gave me a big warm smile. No. Sorry. He asked, still smiling. I'm not doing it. His smile was slowly fading, but you only have to do one letter. It's really not that much. Yeah, I got that. I'm still not going to do it. I stated. But you won't be able to walk on graduation day. Yep. So what's the issue, exactly? You called my mom. His mouth was open like he was going to say something, but I guess nothing came to mind, as we sat in silence for a good 20 seconds, him trying to formulate an argument, and me making a Jim Halpert face.
I told him if that was everything he needed to talk about, I would be heading back to class. He didn't protest, so I just left. It was after this meeting that I eventually got some context. Apparently, California schools will shuffle principals around every few years for some reason that probably makes sense, but I don't care enough to research. Our principal was going to be switching schools after the 2013 semester had ended, and one of his big plans was to leave that high school with 100% participation in the senior projects that would otherwise not affect any final grade. He used the threat of preventing students from walking at graduation to bully everyone into doing the dumb project. Almost everyone I stuck to my guns and refused to do it. And sure enough, after the deadline had passed, they made a big deal about how happy they were that 99.6% of students completed their senior projects, even though they were hoping for 100%. And the absolute dumbest part about this exercise and stupid? After everything was said and done, I was called in one last time to the VP's office. She told me that despite my refusal to do the senior project, they were still going to let me walk, and gave me 5 tickets for friends and family. I laughed, walked out without the tickets, and didn't attend my own graduation. But the transfer number doesn't go to the right place. It goes, "Okie dokie. Shutting up. You're the boss." Several years back I worked at a call center in its death throes doing tech support for a small primarily business-based ISP that was also dying due to terrible service, insane prices, and not changing with the times. So one of the managers wrote up by hand this handy-dandy cheat sheet that had a ton of numbers to different departments, manufacturing companies and other places we regularly had to send customers to. It was honestly good to have as it saved tons of time searching for the numbers every time you needed them. The problem was, however, that one of the numbers at the bottom that every agent used about 30 plus times a day had a typo / was poorly written. Basically a 7 that looked like a 9 or vice versa. Turns out, that one number was the difference between speaking to some boring router maker or busty college teens who wanted nothing more in life than to talk dirty to you for $3.99 a minute. If we did what we are supposed to do, this is a cold transfer. For those lucky enough to not know call center lingo, it's when you transfer the call without waiting to talk to someone on the other line to explain why the customer is calling. You just transfer and end the call without walking the customer through or waiting to hear the other line. It's essentially a "this isn't our problem anymore so CYA later" transfer. For about a solid month or two, about 100 agents had been transferring hundreds if not thousands of people a day to this phone *X line. I was on a call with an old lady, and I had to transfer the call over. but I needed a few moments to finish writing my notes before the next one came in. So instead of hanging up as soon as I heard the ringing telling me it was transferring, I just connected the call and muted myself for a second. She was gonna have to listen to the options for about 3 minutes and wait on hold anyway, so it's not like I would hear anything. That's when instead of hearing the thanks for calling so I heard a soft sexy lady's voice come on the line and say, "Hey there sexy. I heard you like hot busty college girls that want you too. Blah blah, I will let your imagination fill in the rest." I was already reaching for the hang up when I heard the lady on the other line gasp in surprise. After laughing at the surprise when I realized what had happened, I looked at the sheet and cross-checked it with the database. And that's when I saw the 7 was written to look like a 9 by mistake/bad handwriting. The same sheet that was just photocopied, laminated and handed out to every employee with a note to be mandated by our betters is to be stuck on the wall of each cubicle and exclusively used from now on instead of the database. I asked about 7 or 8 people without telling them what the number for X was, and they all told me the same incorrect number. So, me being young and dumb, I thought I had discovered something the mangers on call would be happy to hear about and go around correcting everyone's sheet with a red marker or something simple. Instead, I got yelled at for being off the phones when I should be taking calls. They didn't even want to hear what I said and told me unless the building's on fire or my shift is over I need to get back to my seat and stop bothering them. They claimed I was lying and trying to get out of working. I'm here to answer phone calls and not to think. So instead of just taking a second to dial the number and confirm the error, they decided to lecture me. Sigh. Managers. Surprised, I just shook my head and went back to my desk. I explained what had happened and everyone on the floor tried it to see and had a good laugh about it. Instead of making the correction though, we did as we were told and kept using the incorrect number. About a month went by before they had finally gotten enough complaints from customers to launch an investigation into what was happening and how this mysterious problem could be happening. Meanwhile, it was an open secret every frontline agent knew. Sadly, no one got in trouble, and the call center shut down about 6 months later out of the blue as they are wont to do. But at least all the frontline agents got to have a good laugh at the expense of rude and ignorant management. Whenever we had to transfer someone, it was a highlight of our day because it felt like we were sticking it to Mangment. And at least the shitey company lost some money assigning people to investigate the problem. My school spends $1,200 going behind my back, ends up and letting me get out of a week of classes. So this happened years ago, 2009, when I was a junior in high school. Also, I only really post when I'm drinking, so if the formatting is bad I apologize and will try to fix it. I was 16 at the time and a theater kid at my high school. Specifically, I was what we referred to as a techie, meaning that we did all the technical aspects of the show. Things like building the sets, lighting, sound, and makeup among other things. Now my school was in a pretty affluent area, suburbs of LA. We were near Malibu. Because of that, the arts were a pretty big deal for the school and community. I focused on the lighting aspect and really enjoyed it. I was never really popular at school as I always felt out of place. I grew up in a different area and did not know anyone. Also, my family didn't really have money like everyone else. We lived in a trailer park, so I was self-conscious about that. So I kinda threw my whole life into the theater. I normally would not leave school until 11 or 12 at night since we were always either getting ready for a show or striking from the last show. Since I spent more time in the theater than I did in class, I knew things about that building no one else in the school did. It got to the point where I was basically an employee for the school. I ran every function which utilized the theater or auditorium and had keys to every building. Thinking back to it, I'm not sure how legal it was. Normally there are special lights used for theater, but our director that year, it was her first year at the school, liked to add normal lamps and lights to the sets themselves. She was a horrible person and verbally abusive to her students and actors, especially the tech side. She hated me because I did everything I could to keep her away from my crew. I could really look out for the actors, but if she tried to yell at my crew, I would intervene or they would walk away and tell her to take it up with me. By this time I had become the informal leader of the techies and nothing really could happen in the theater or auditorium since I was the only one who knew how to keep it all working. I kept trying to explain to her that this was not good practices or probably even safe as I was not an electrician. We had an old system, and I had to rewire stage pins, special plug/socket for stage lights as they draw far more power, to work with a regular 3-prong that you would use in the house. She however really wanted the set to look like a real house, So I followed her wishes and rigged it up, which involved a lot of cussing and one near-death experience involving a 12-foot A-frame, electricity, and a lighting assistant too busy having fun with her girlfriend to turn the power off on the right switch. Now this is where things started to go wrong. Every light gets plugged into a specific socket with a specific number which corresponds to a specific slider on our lighting board in the back. Our board was an old mechanical one because the school didn't want to upgrade to the newer ones. If the slider was pushed too far up, the normal lamps, what we called bulbs, would burn out and cause the dimmer switch, think a big A*S breaker, to flip. My only solution to this was to put tape on the slider, making sure it could not get above the point which would cause the breaker to flip. This would normally work, but since we would run a show for 4 weeks, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and 2 Saturday shows, we were blowing through lamps and tripping the dimmer switch once or twice a week. On our final show closing night, the dimmer switch tripped and we had to call a 5-minute so I could fix it. Only this time flipping the dimmer back wasn't returning power, and worse, all the other lights were out as well, not just the I had wired myself. Pretty quickly I figured out that the issue wasn't the dimmer switch itself, and had to be something else since the whole box lost power. I was pretty sure what the problem was but did not say anything yet, as I hated this director and wanted to see what she would say. She started to yell and curse me out before I could explain. Luckily the assistant principal was there, and we were cool, so he asked me what we needed to do. I told him that I could probably fix it, but I wasn't sure how long it would take. While I had a pretty good idea what the issue was, I didn't want to make promises I couldn't keep. The director heard this and said she no longer trusted me with this theater, and she wanted to hire a professional to look at the dimmer box. She was saying since I broke it, I obviously did not know how to fix it. I shrugged and said okay, but a technician from the company is gonna be expensive, and we have an old A*S system. I offered to at least try first and maybe save the school money. She flatly refused. So closing night for that show ended before intermission, and the school refunded all the tickets. That Monday I learned she managed to convince the principal to hire the technician, and that he will be there later that week. I don't remember the exact day. So I get pulled out of class to help show the technician the box, explain what went wrong, and help him if I could. Once I show him the dimmer box, he takes one look and says the company no longer makes that model, and he has no idea how to fix it. He spent 30 minutes or so playing around with it, but couldn't get it to work, and honestly I don't think he cared that much. After school the principal said they end up having to pay him $1,200, and the director probably would not be coming back next year. He also asked me if I could try to fix it. I said yes, but it might take me a few days, and since rehearsals took place after school I could only work during class hours. He exist me from all my classes. At this point I already knew what the problem was because I came in on Sunday alone to test my theory. See, the building has 2 separate breaker boxes. The main one everyone knows about, which is in the back next to out panel saw, and the one only I knew about, which was behind the dimmer box. Since the dimmer box was bolted to wall, no one bothered to check. I only knew because the year before I dropped a wrench behind it, and had to unbolt it to get my wrench back. I fixed the problem in less than an hour, told the principal it would be a 2 or 3 days, and just spent that time working in the theater, messing around with my friends and getting a head start on the next show. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.